Hi, everyone. Thank you guys so much for joining us tonight for a special discussion with Joe Robert Cole, the writer-director of All Day and a Night, brand new Netflix original film that just premiered today on Netflix. And the conversation is going to be hosted by Derek Garlington, who is just finishing his MFA here at USC. And I also want to congratulate anyone else that's accomplishing that feat in the next week or so. But Derek is the co-president of our African American Cinema Society, and he'll be moderating the discussion. We'll also have plenty of time at the end for questions from all of you guys. I just want to quickly say that for the Q&A, what we'll do is have you guys put your questions in the Q&A box. And when we open it up, I'll call on you guys and allow you to ask your questions live so that you can actually speak with Joe more directly. But just give me a second. It takes a moment with the webinar to get you guys up and running once I've called on you. But it should be a really interesting conversation. In addition to writing and directing his debut feature, Joe was also the co-writer of Black Panther, which was, of course, directed by our very own Ryan Coogler. So it's very exciting to get a chance to talk to Joe and to talk about his new work. So I'm going to go ahead and unmute our panelists, and we can get started. So virtually, I guess, let's please give a warm welcome to Joe Robert Cole and Derek Garlington.
Hey there.
This is always a little bit slow.
Did you get me, my video?
Hey, Jeff.
Oh, yeah. You're good to go.
Hey, Jeff.
All right. Hey, how are you guys doing?
Pretty good, man. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure, man. It's my pleasure.
Yeah, how's it feel today, man? Your film's released today and out on Netflix. How's it feel to have this out to the world now?
It feels really good, man. You know, it's been a journey. I wrote the script 9 or 10 years ago. It's been a little while, and you know, always had an intention on making it, and was able to kind of start taking the steps to do that. I guess while I was still working on Black Panther. After I did People vs. OJ, I think it was a couple months before Black Panther came out that Netflix came on to fund the movie. So, you know, that was a little while ago too. So it's been a process even from then.
Nice. That's awesome to hear. That actually kind of leads into one of my first questions, which is going to be generally, how did your career in life lead you to writing and directing this story?
Right. Yeah, you know, the world of the story is one that I navigated at various times in my life, just, you know, and I was inspired by some things that I've seen and folks I've met and spent time with. My grandmother used to say that our family wasn't born with a silver spoon in our mouth. You know, I guess a final kind of touch point for me to actually want to make this particular film was hearing about someone who had murdered someone that I was close to, and hearing about that person's life and starting to feel sorry for that person based on their social circumstance, the kind of systemic issues in their community that they were dealing with in their life. And I just felt like I wanted to try to tell a story in the world by, you know, the person who passed away and this individual, and kind of humanize a world and a character that we don't often see, or don't often, we struggle to see the humanity in, right? I think that's the best way to say it. Yeah.
Nice. Well, and speaking on that, when it came to writing this film, you know, I recently watched it and enjoyed it. And with our lead character, Ja, he was such an emotionally reactive character. I thought there was a line of dialogue that really spoke to him in terms of just talking about the fact that his friend was even like, you can't just let the world shake you so much. So, and having this character, we all kind of have those moments, especially he has in the film, of feeling like he could make it, and then because someone says something to him, it kind of completely destroys his own ego. And I just thought that was a very interesting character trait for him. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about Ja as a character and what it was like kind of crafting this person who wants to be tough, but you could tell it's not as tough as he seems.
Yeah, none of us are, right? No, you know, that's
Yeah.
the truth of humanity. We all are full of frailties, and it's our weaknesses that oftentimes cause us to react in ways that are aggressive or in ways that are detrimental to ourselves and others. And so, you know, in looking at who he is, you know, I think the larger kind of struggle he's dealing with in the film is he's you know, he's struggling with uh, being being in prison, trying to understand the difference between the kind of societal walls that were put around him, and the systemic walls that were put around him and his community outside prison, and the walls that he's dealing with inside prison, and just um, trying to understand how he ended up where he is, and how he ended up being a part of the problem, how he ended up, you know, and in doing that and trying to take that journey of self-discovery, that's where our flashbacks, that's where we start to see those moments in his life that led to what the act that he committed. But you know, it's that journey of self-discovery that also is a journey towards hope for his own son, by through him understanding better his own life and his father's life. You know, trying to, you know, the awareness to try to then use that as a way of finding hope for his own son, to break the cycle that existed in his family. So yeah, I tried to, as I was approaching him as a character, you know, when I think about characters, it's all about the humanity, and with this character and in this world, authenticity, because I wanted to, you know, stay very, very rooted and grounded in what's true to the world as best as I could present it. And because the journey that I wanted the audience to take was one where they are seeing the movie through this character's eyes, which is not a typical character that you would journey through a movie with. And so I felt if I was going to do it, I needed to stay true and have it be unflinching, and really, you know, if you're going to take the journey, then understand the psychological and the emotional and all of the elements, the pressures that exist, and try to take the audience through a journey of walking in his shoes. And so I spent a lot of time thinking about his weaknesses and his strengths and the humanity of that, and what does he want, his hopes and dreams. You know, everybody, you know, there's one line of voiceover where it's, you know, there's a moment in everybody's life where they feel they're going to be great. You know, what is that moment for him? And so just trying to focus on those things with his character, and I did that with all the characters. I really tried to allow the humanity and to drive the story, to drive how I dealt with the actors, to drive my decisions across the board.
Yeah, and I think it definitely came through, and it was interesting too in terms of the way you kind of worked with time, and I couldn't help but be really intrigued in it, especially because you had a wonderful cast, including Ashton Sanders, who was also in a film that used time to kind of elaborate in the story. But I thought what was so interesting about yours is we would flash forward, then back, and then towards the middle. And I wanted to know, with that flow, it really gave the movie an interesting sequence, you know, in terms of kind of following the narrative. So what was some of your rhyme and reasoning and decision making on how to tell this story in such a way that flowed?
That's a good question, because the script itself, when I was writing the script, I was greatly influenced by Memento, because it tells this crime story backwards in time. So my script actually goes backwards in time. And so all the kid stuff goes forward, all the adult flashbacks go backwards, and the prison stuff is locked in. So we shot, that's the way the script plays. And so we shot, we finished, this, pretty ambitious production, schedule, and we had some great stuff. And then I got into the editing room. I was extremely fortunate to have a great editor that I work with, Mako Kamasuna. And, but I think the post was probably the most challenging aspect of the film for me, because, we hit this creative reality of cutting a movie where you'd have these great scenes. They're just dramatic, well-acted scenes. They're shot well, all of the stuff you want. And you're intellectually understanding why that scene works, but you emotionally are finding out why it works later in the movie. So you're never, I was finding that we had lost something. We weren't rooted in the moment emotionally with the characters. And so we went on this odyssey of trial and error to try to take the script and how the script made you feel. And it worked in the script because the language gave the context that you needed, the scene description, all of the language gave the context you needed to stay rooted with Ja. But once it was on screen, once we're looking at it, you didn't have that same context. So we went about finding a new structure for the movie. And the goal, and I feel really proud, and I give Mako a lot of credit, again, as a great collaborator with me, was finding how to tell the same emotional journey, to give the audience the same emotional journey while staying rooted in the moment. And so that's where our structure, that's why our structure is a little elastic in a way. It goes, because it's really trying to, what we leaned into was, these are his memories, right? So let's lean into that. Where is he in his mind? I mean, when we're thinking about things, our mind goes all over the place. It's not a consistent, linear structure backwards or forward. We bounce around. And so since this is him discovering who he is, we felt liberated to be able to try to shape the journey and the narrative that the journey that he takes, and the narrative that we unfold to the audience, without feeling obligated to go in a particular timeline.
Yeah, I found that to be one of the very compelling parts of the movie that was fun. So I appreciate you taking that leap of creative faith to be like, all right, let's tell this in a different order. But it gave it a flow where it always kept you interested. So
good. I'm glad, man. I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're like,
hoping I hope this gets across the way.
Yeah. So.
And then speaking of getting across, I thought your wonderful cast did such an excellent job, especially the pivotal relationship between Jeffrey Wright and Ashton, their characters, Ja and his father. And I was wondering if you could speak to working with a cast that they all come from these different fields, but just different levels of experience, but bringing their own thing to the table. How was that experience working with the actors on set as a director? Because I know writing tends to be your main thing, but this is your second film you've directed, correct?
Yeah, it's interesting. My first film was it was very experimental. And so it was like, there were 4 creators, me and 3 actresses. We voted on everything. We voted on the scene list. Then they improv the scenes. I recorded improvs and then wrote the script out of their own words. We had no money. So it was a very kind of mumblecore. It was like very much so all of us. I happened to end up, in the position of director, but it was a much more collaborative thing. And we just all wanted to make something. So we did it together. But so this was a bit different. This was much more the traditional you know, this is my vision for the film, and you know, kind of then collaborating with people to make it better than what I could have.
Mm.
In terms of working with the actors, you know, I had spent after I got out of school, I spent some time studying method in Meisner, not to become an actor, but because I knew one day, I love great acting, and I knew one day I wanted to, you know, I love storytelling, and so any capacity, and I knew directing was something that I might do, and so I did that for a couple years, and I really, I think I gained a tremendous respect for the craft of acting, and the vulnerability that you know, the courage that you have to go to put yourself out there to do any kind of meaningful work. And so I actually really love working with actors. You know, I also felt like when I was doing those classes and being kind of, because I'm introvert in a way, and being forced to get up in front of people and doing those classes, you also learn about humanity and character in a great way. Some of the, you know, great plays and things like that. And so it just helped me as a storyteller. So working with the actors with this particular group was fantastic, because they had they had so much depth to them, and they were so intuitive and so smart, and they were courageous about the work. And so it allowed me to be able to really drill down and get at what's beneath the language in the scenes. And you know, we didn't have a locked off rehearsal period. You know, that's rare. I did get to spend some time with Jeffrey, Ashton, and Jalen. We spent some time together working on their relationship arc. I felt it was important that actually Ashton and Jeffrey work on some of young Jacour's stuff, because when they meet in prison, they're strangers, but there's this history. And so, you know, actually we did a little work where Ashton is reading his young, you know, the stuff that the young version of him, so we can just kind of try to find that baseline for them. But then, you know, I talked to all of the actors about their characters, and they had their homework and things like that they would do. I like to come to set with understanding what a scene is about, you know, and how each character fits into the scene. And then I also like in post, I like having choices. And so I always have a handful of adjustments that after we kind of get to a place where we're comfortable, I try to really throw some things in there where we can kind of have some different choices, you know, different adjustments and things like that. And so in that process, also, I'm very open to hearing what my actors feel, what their thoughts are, what they're coming to the table with, and then adjusting organically to that. And I'm also not, within that structure of understanding what a scene is about, I'm not afraid. I don't think my words are sacred. And so I'm not afraid for, you know, if someone's in the moment, for them to improv a line or to kind of work through what feels right. I think that's magic. And so, you know, so these actors that I had were all so, one, pouring themselves into the work. They all believe so much in the project, and they all are so talented that it just made for a really wonderful experience for me, and to be able to work with all of them. And no one, you know, down to, I mean, you think of Margot Hall, the Mrs. White, you know, Margot was amazing. You know, one scene, but you know, she gave it. She came, she brought it, and she's real. You know, so I was really, really fortunate to have the group I had.
It's really great. It's always a great experience when you get to work with actors like that. And I'm similar fashion. I believe, you know, sometimes words can be precious, certain things need to get across, but when an actor just kind of feels and embodies it, you just go with it. But in terms of all, you know, the directing aspect of things, I also wanted to know, Oakland seems like a place that you've returned to, you know, a couple of times now. I wanted to know what was the importance of having in Oakland, or what was the feel of having it in Oakland? And then in particular, I thought one scene where that really came out and was just technically great was that street scene going from we're in the party inside. And from what I can tell, a lot of it felt like one shot going from that party inside and moving outside to the So just wondering about Oakland as a whole, and then what was it like shooting that scene, and what was that in Video Village? I'm sure you're watching it in Video Village, and you know, you need all the pieces to go together. So I'd love to know what that feeling was like when that scene was coming alive.
Cool. Good question. All right. So I wanted the film to be set in a place that could feel at the same time really specific, but speak to communities dealing with similar issues, to be honest, around the world, right? And Oakland has, it's a hard place to fake. It has, the people have a particular way they carry themselves. They have a particular dialect, language there, the phrases and words and things mean things that are different than other places. And it's just, there's a specificity to it that I felt was really specific, but also accessible, right? A lot of our slang across our country has started in the Bay Area, believe it or not, and kind of disseminated out. And so there's an access point to the place, but there's a real specificity there. And it's one of the things that I thought was amazing about what Jeffrey did. He truly embodied the mannerisms, the language, the posture. I had a couple people from the Bay, from Oakland, East Oakland, who saw early screening, and they were like, dude, I know that guy. Like, I know that dude. Like, and I mean, you know, Jeffrey is Jeffrey. He's amazing, can do anything. But for him to just disappear into that role that way was amazing. So just in terms of the city, I wanted to do that. And I was fortunate to have lived all around the Bay when I was in school. You know, I went to Berkeley. And so, but between classes and semesters, spent a lot of time in Oakland with people from there. And so I got familiar with the city. I got familiar with the struggles of the city, you know, and the humanity of it, and the beautiful history of it, and the uniqueness of it, all of those things. And so it was an easy decision for me, because it was a really formidable time in my life, to be honest, you know. And so a lot of what I experienced when I was in the Bay really shaped who I am. And so it was somewhere where I felt very comfortable, authentically being able to work within the world there, and felt like I had not seen a film that took place in Oakland that dealt with the terrain that I was wanting to cover in the way that I wanted to cover. So that was why I wanted to, you know, do it there, and chose to do it there. And with the sideshow, so sideshows, those started in East Oakland in the 80s. And, you know, that's a unique, people have car races and things all over the world, right? That's not a unique, but sideshows where people are on their phone texting, and all of a sudden you're blocking off an intersection, and there's so many cars the police can't get in. And so they just have to sit up. Like, that's a very Bay thing. And so I felt like a lot of what I wanted to do was to kind of lean into the authenticity of the place and that specificity. And that is an event that I knew it was going to be the kind of a visual centerpiece of the story from the first, when I was writing it. I knew that would set it would set the place and in a very specific way. And so, you know, I went about pitching my idea to all of my producers, and, you know, everybody's eyes got very big, because it was a very ambitious shot that I wanted to do. And, you know, it was about finding the right location, It was about finding the right way technically to accomplish the kind of continuous shot I wanted, how to do it safely, you know, when you talk about coming between the cars, how to do it within our budget, right? And so there were a lot of variables that went into it. But I mean, once we found the location, I was, I had an overhead layout on this big table in my office, and we had little cars and little people, like little crowds of people. And I was mapping out mapping out the route and how I felt it would look. I didn't know what cars were going to be where yet, because we're still, again, with our budget, we're like still trying to get the right amount, enough cars, and get everything we needed. The people in the Bay were extremely supportive of the movie, and they came out, and the scene actually is made by them. You know, those oneers take a lot of coordination, a lot of time. They were patient. They had energy. They were excited. They never lost their enthusiasm. And that's what makes the scene. It feels like a real sideshow, because a lot of them actually go to sideshows. And so and it was great. A thing that I tried to do also was I tried to use as many like local elements. I talk about this a little bit, like the BART train that goes by was really important. And I used the sound of the BART in other scenes in the movie, just because it's such an identifier of the Bay Area. The guy on the bike, the cat on the bike, he's a local dude. He runs a bike club. He's well known there. We got him. It was great to have him, because people will see it and go, oh, there he is, right? One of the cars, the gray car that was swinging, that car is at every sideshow swing. In fact, so we're able to, and that guy who's driving it, that's his car, right? And so we were able to really kind of play with, oh no, it wasn't his car. He offered his car, and we put a stunt guy in his car because we couldn't have him. That's right, he had to sign up anyway. So it wasn't him in the car, but it was his car. It was his ride, and he was there. So it was an amazing 2 nights. We did it over 2 nights. You asked about being at the viewfinder. It was a Steadicam shot. I like to follow behind. And so I'm
wow,
walking.
You're right in the act.
I'm always like I like the little handheld, or I like to be up in the mix. And so I was literally following him through I'm behind him through the whole thing. And just trying to, I probably look crazy when I'm back there because I'm looking all goofy, but I'm trying to, navigate, telling him, try to get this, get that. Our Steadicam guy was Will. He was amazing. And we went through and we did about 7 takes. There are 2 stitches in it. And the bulk of it, and one of the stitches is when they come out the back door and Shantae goes up on the balcony or on the patio. And so when she crosses the beam, that's a stitch. And then the next stitch is until all the way when we get to the cars, when we're going out to the go between the cars that are doing donuts, because just in terms of safety, trying to time that out, once you get to the end of that, that wasn't going to be something that that we wanted to try to make work after that long journey all the way down there. And then, one of the things we had to do also was, the Netflix's their safety rep. She was great, by the way, but their safety rep, she came and when I presented the whole thing, she was just looking at me like, we're gonna have a talk after. And so I needed to figure out, and she didn't say I couldn't do it. She said I needed to figure out how to do it without having a car behind the camera. Because even though if a car spins out, it's gonna go outward. So it's not really a danger to the cameraman. they still, it did not matter. They were like, you cannot, it's too much of a risk to have two cars and a camera in between, even though people do that. I mean, that is what people do at sideshows. They get in the middle with their phones. And so that's why I wanted to have that experience. And so I figured out that if we were moving in towards one car and the car that had just passed ducked out to the side, no one would know that the car wasn't there. So there's only one car, but it feels like they're both there. So we figured that out. Once we had got over that hurdle, then, you know, it was about just executing. We did some stunt tests, camera tests, some previs and stuff like that. The woman driving our main car, she was the driver on Black Panther for Nakia. And yeah, so she had, you know, she's all that and everything. But yeah, so that was the experience. It was a great experience. Ryan came and visited set. Him and Zenzi came and visited set while we were shooting Sideshow for a little bit. They popped in, and that was really great. So yeah.
It seemed like such an authentic experience. You could just feel the authenticity. Like, I knew those people were from the area, and I think it's always great when you can bring just like the real community and sense into a scene like that. So yeah, I'd never been to a sideshow, and I felt like I knew, you know, I'm gonna tell somebody I know exactly what it's like. I've been there.
That's great. That's what it's supposed to feel like. You know, if you know, I'll tell you one of the reasons that I didn't follow them all the way through the leads is because I wanted the camera. I wanted to see them get swallowed up. When you're at a sideshow, you feel like you get swallowed up in all of it. And so I wanted the camera to feel that way, so you could feel what it's like to be there more than following Ja, because, you know, through it. You know what I mean? At most of the movie we're with him, but we leave him. So the fact that that's the idea was to try to get a sense of what that energy is. And I'm really glad you felt that.
Definitely did. So thank you for that. Got a few more questions, and we'll probably open it up in a few. But I guess might hop back to the movie again for one, but I really want to get this question in while we have time. So speaking more generally of your career, because, you know, of course, speaking with USC as, you know, School of Cinematic Arts. So as a filmmaker, I'm curious about this. You've had a couple works that I feel, at least from my perspective, feel kind of like tentpole works, which was working on American Crime Story, OJ, you know, that's a television show, then working on a blockbuster like Black Panther with Coogler and co-writing that, and now writing and directing essentially your debut, since the first one was so experimental, your debut film. And what would you say are probably some things you've learned from those journeys, and what makes them different and what makes them similar with those three projects?
Oh, good question, man. Good question. Well, when I'll start with OJ because it was the first one. I'd never worked in TV, and I had met a producer named Brad Simpson. Him and Nina Jacobson. Their company is Color Force. They produce All Day and the Night as well, and People vs. OJ. But I had met Brad prior to that. You know, very early. We were both, you know, just kind of like starting out. And I went into the writers program, the Marvel Writers program, and I came out, and Brad was like, let's have coffee. And we had coffee. He's like, I think there's a show that we're going to do that would be great for you. And I was like, okay, I'll try. You know, I think television is just a longer form of storytelling. So I've always wanted to do both, film and television. So luckily, it was interesting. All of the writers in that room were feature writers. None of us had TV experience. So it was Scott Alexander, Larry Karaszewski, and they had only done
from here,
right? Yeah, and D.B. Sintes, and you know, and so it's all, and me, and so it was all, you know, feature writers. But what I learned and what was amazing about the experience was how, because I've always written alone, is how collaborative and how fun collaborating on story can be when someone's breaking out an episode like this the idea of they're on the board going through and everybody's chipping in ideas because you've all read 10 books on O.J. Simpson, and this moment might be there, and you're building and bouncing ideas off in a way that when I'm sitting alone, at home alone, typing on my computer, I never had that. And it was really beautiful and enlightening. And I was in a room with such talented people that it was just kind of an amazing kind of experience. And there was no one in there who had all of the TV experience. So they were like kind of, impressing upon us how we needed to do it. It was an organic experience of like us figuring out how to do television from all of our points of view. And so it was a great experience. And I spent a lot of time because Brad was in that room with us. The producer was in that room with us every day, and Nina would drop in and out. And so just all of these smart, talented people talking through story for 6 weeks. It really, that was great. I think the show worked so well because of all the openness of the creator, Scott Alexander and Larry, and how open they were to everyone's ideas, and how we would have vigorous debate on what things were and how things should work, but in the best possible way to get to what was underneath the surface of what was going on, and to show a 360 of something that was particularly polarizing, right? Mm-hmm. And so that was what I got from that, and I knew after that I wanted to do more TV, and just it was just like eye-opening in terms of a creative experience as storytelling, and then that led into, was really interesting. I was working on my pitch for Black Panther while I was supervising my OJ episodes. So I would be like in my spare time trying to get my pitch together. And so when they hired me, we had a conversation. It was like, they were going to talk to, we're thinking of talking to Ryan, and he may want to co-write the script. And I'm a big fan of Ryan's. Before me and Nate Moore, the executive producer, we saw Fruitvale together before we knew who Ryan was. And 5 minutes in, I turned and looked at him and said, "I'm going to cry in this movie." And sure, you just immediately, he's so talented. So, and so I was like, I'm down. And part of that also is because I just had this great creative experience collaborating in story. So it was like, oh yeah, that can be really great. And my God, he's amazing. So I would love to work with him, in that way. And so, and so that kind of led into that process. In Black Panther, you're learning, for me, because I had been in the writer program, I was familiar with Kevin Feige. I was familiar with Nate Moore, familiar with the way they approach story, because when you're in a program, you're dealing with the actual executives who make movies. So it's not a separate thing. You're handing scripts to, the guy who is on this movie. And so your notes are the same as notes you would get, right? And so you're getting that sense of the wish fulfillment they look for, how they like to embed character moments in action, and all these like details and things like that. So I had that experience, but when you're actually going through the actual process of a movie that big, and seeing the machine and how it works, and seeing how deftly, to be honest, Ryan navigated how all that works, and how open Kevin was in terms of like us and telling this story and making it a personal story. And it showed me what's possible. They say, oh, with 10 poles, or when it's so big, you can't, you get so limited. It doesn't always have to be that way. It's about the people that you're working with, and it's about the trust that they have, and how open, and it was always like a really great open dialogue and earnestness, and you know, and Ryan sets the tone for that, and the kind of person he is, and Kevin Feige is that way, and so is Nate, you know, and so you were in that kind of I was able to see how a movie that big could still feel intimate in the working, you know, in how you're working on it, and in terms of the storytelling, which was very heartening, you know, in terms of as someone who loves character, as someone who loves meaningful stories, but also someone who loves big world building stuff. It's great to know that that's possible, and it may not be every time, but to know it's possible and to have seen it can help me in the future to be able to, you know, do it again in some capacity. And then for my film, the thing I learned the most, so I like to multitask, and as a writer, so I can write more than one thing at once. I can write 3 or more, and I thought, oh, you know what? Direct this movie. I could write this and that on the set, and it became apparent immediately upon heading up for pre-production that not only can you only direct the movie when you're directing a movie, it's the only thing you want to do. It becomes so it's all encompassing, and you want it to be all encompassing. And so it was enlightening to me to know, as someone who likes to, when I'm writing, I like the idea of having fresh eyes, so I can work on this and then I bounce to that, and it keeps me but direct, I realized, no, I don't want nor need, I want to lose myself in this thing that I'm creating. I need to answer all these questions from a real grounded place of understanding, and I need to be living it. And so that's what I learned from my movie, which was, it was amazing, man. It was exhilarating to kind of to get swallowed up in the movie. So
yeah, just to be in that whole realm of things. Thank you for those answers. So let me know when you want to move to the audience. I still got a few more, but just cut me off when you're ready.
I mean, you know, we have some questions from the audience, but if you want to keep going, I leave that up to you.
Okay, cool. I just had a few small ones, and then for sure you move to the audience.
I try to keep them short. I know I'm stretching them out for you, man.
No, it's all good. All the detail is what we want. We want to hear that integral stuff. One thing I always like to ask about movies, because I feel like it's inevitable, is what were some or one particular like happy accident, something you didn't expect to happen on set that happened that actually ended up being kind of fruitful? And then what was a darling you had to kill? What's something that you were really hoping to get in there, or really that you maybe had to leave on the cutting room floor or leave in a draft of your script?
Okay, let me think of the accident. Dude, I have to think of it. I'm having a hard time with the happy accident. Hold on, I'll think about it. But I'll tell you the darling that I had to kill. There were some really beautiful scenes with Regina Taylor, a couple fantastic scenes with Kelly Jenneret, and because when we did the restructure of the story, you know, there were some things that no longer fit in the tapestry of the movie, and I just, you know, they were both so fantastic in the movie and gave so much that those were things that, like, I was struggling, knowing that those moments needed to come out of the movie, but I was struggling. I was holding on, trying all different ways to keep certain things in, and ultimately the reality was that you know, the film was better, is a better version of the movie without them, and so those for sure. And there was also Andrea Ellsworth. She had a scene that her and Ashton had a couple scenes that I really loved. that we had to, trim down, and one we had to remove. So so some of that stuff were things that that I you shoot a lot, and everything can't get in there.
Mhm.
Happy accident, man. I should have one of these, man. Oh, you know what a happy accident was? I brought it up. The guy who was the guy whose car that we used,
Mhm.
he showed up. We had another car, right? But he showed up, and they knew, like, cats who do sideshows. They showed up, like they were all there, and I had been chopping it up with one of them just in general about like how important authenticity was, and he said, "Yo, that's the car." And I was like, "Oh, I've been to a sideshow with that guy's car." And he's like, "You got to put him in it." And so I had to talk to our production team about insurance. Like I went on a whole detour to, like, in the middle while they were setting up everything to get it set up where he could sign off for us to use his car. So that was a happy accident. And it, if you're from the Bay and you go to sideshows, you're going to see that car and you're going to be like, "Yo, that car belongs." So yeah, that was a happy accident. Yeah.
That's so awesome. Cool. And I think my my last general, I can wrap it up into one, and then definitely move on to audience questions. And thank you for that's so cool. I love when those moments happen. The car just happened to be there and you're able to make it happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, my last question was looking a little bit towards the future. I know you have this project that you've been in the works with Michael B. a little bit, Failsafe, correct?
Yeah.
And I'd kind of heard a little bit that some of what is in that script and in that story with the comic is kind of paralleling a little bit of what we're going through with our time. So I wanted to know how that, kind of that looking forward, how's that project looking, what to look out for. And then also with budding filmmakers now, no one has answers to this situation, but what's maybe some advice you could give for people who are getting ready to graduate like me, or people going out in the world and kind of dealing with some uncharted territory? That's like the two-part question I kind of close with.
Yeah. So Failsafe is going well. I'm writing it now. Since it's at Netflix, they know I've been a little bit occupied, but I'm actually currently working on it. And I think the best kind of science fiction finds a way to root itself in the moment, and in the graphic novel, and I guess my approach to adapting the graphic novel already had touched on public health. It already touched on like public safety and technology and some things. But then, because I started diving back in a really serious way with the script, while right before the pandemic hit, it just has really informed, as I'm, kind of working with the producers. It's really informed how we're kind of shaping the story, and not in a way where we're trying to shoehorn anything in, but in a way where what's happening in the world is informing what should be happening in the world of the movie that we're trying to do. And look, it's an action. It's like it's a sci-fi action movie. So but it's entertaining, but it's a thought. It's thought provoking as well. And so it's certainly, it's not Contagion, but it certainly is something that you're thinking about public health and how that and how we want to perfect who we are as human beings. Like, how do we perfect this instrument, and how does technology, how does that a part of it in terms of like medicine and so on and so forth. So it's been really exciting, actually. I've been fortunate to spend time talking to various scientists in different fields and just trying to see how things work. And a lot of it is just mind blowing. I love talking to people who know stuff I have no idea about, and scientists, I'm always awed by some of the stuff that I learn. So that's what's going on with that. What I would say, yeah, man, since we don't know, no one knows how the how the business is going to reopen. You know, the when production will start. The vast majority of fields within the business can't work. There's no production, so all the crew there's no one can work that. All of the, some people, if their movie was in post, maybe they have a remote facility, but lots of things are shut down. Production companies are shut down. And so really right now, the only job people can really do is write. And so what I would say is, in the window of time that is, that before anyone can do anything, if that script you got needs a little work, then it would be a good time to do it, because you're not losing any time out hitting the pavement, because nobody's out there, right? So if you're honing that so that when there is an opportunity to actually get back into the groove of things, you have the best possible piece of material that you can go out with. And if, I don't know, if you had a short and you cutting it, you have your facility, maybe it's tweak, like whatever it is that you have that you're going to go out as your calling card. This is a time when you can hone that. Even if it's a pitch of a movie you want to do, how many times are you practicing that a day? How many, like just all of those things, I think it would be a good use of time when, essentially there's very little we could all do.
Thank you so much, Joe, for answering all those questions, and love just seeing your vibrancy about telling stories and hearing a little behind the scenes. So thank you so much.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, man. My pleasure.
Thank you. And Alex, did you want to turn it to some audience questions?
Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and bring Caitlin into the conversation. Caitlin, I'm switching you over to panelists, so feel free to turn on your video. Let me just make sure. I sometimes have to do this for you. Thought we had Caitlin. Okay. That she might have been dropped. Let me see. Well, let's go to Ellis instead, and I'll keep an eye out for Caitlin. Okay, Ellis, you should be with us.
I'm here.
How you doing, man?
Hey, Joe, how you doing?
Good.
Quick little thing. So Nate, he's actually a Jackie Robinson scholar, which is my scholarship foundation. So I did a Q&A with Nate a while ago when Black Panther was coming out. So really dope. Nate's a dope guy. But I actually wanted to ask you a question sort of about the collaborative process working with a big studio film like with Marvel versus with Netflix, and sort of the differences between what they want to ask for in a studio film versus Netflix in a smaller scale streaming type of film.
That's a good question. So Marvel is Marvel's kind of a machine, right? They know how they find the right voice for a project, and then that voice works within the parameters of this kind of larger operation, right? And you're able to, express yourself creatively. Those movies all feel different because they're different creators. James Gunn is doing a very different movie than Ryan is, right? And so it's not as if everything feels like it's all the same. In fact, it's really about that creative thrust put into the machine that Marvel has to make those movies fit within the same universe, right? Netflix is they're a different entity in the sense that they are very creative. They're creative driven in a different way. So Marvel's creative driven. We want to create it. We put them into the system and they work within the system. Netflix is much more, we hire a creative and then we let them have the freedom to create their own way, right? So Netflix is, they are, if they believe in what you're doing, they show you with their actions, and they show you with their support financially and with your and you know, with your resources and things that you might need, but also with the freedom to what they buy, they allow you to make, instead of buying it and then telling you how to make it, right? So it's just, you know, they're not making tent poles either, and they're not, you know, not in the way that Marvel does. Marvel has a lot of variables there. Everything has to fit within a universe, and so there's a lot of elements to that. But Netflix is much more. There's more freedom to be an auteur in a Netflix project. I mean, they allowed. I think they came to set once the first week, and then when I was doing my sideshow stuff, they certainly were there. But then I think they came once they were comfortable with what I was doing. I think they came towards the end, and they let me make my movie. And then in post, they were super supportive. They were, you know, and never were there any conversations. You know, my film is tough material, and it was ambitious, and never once did they waver from their support of me or the movie, and allowing me to make the decisions so that the film that exists now is the film that I want it to exist. And you know, but when there's something huge like a tentpole like Black Panther, there are always going to be compromises because there are lots of variables, you know, that are also involved. So,
thank you for sharing.
Yep.
Okay, we have Caitlin back, so I'm going to try switching you over again. Caitlin, I'm going to move you to panelist, so just give that a second. Hang on. Sorry.
Hey, Kayla.
Hey, I was doing a face mask. I had no idea that you guys were speaking.
Sorry.
But I know that you were a writer initially, so I was wondering, how did you sharpen your eye as a director, like to know, okay, this type of coverage I want? Like, what experiences did you have, or how did you study that, like those basics, before you just like, I'm just gonna direct?
Yeah, I shot little things myself. Like I would just, you know, you shoot little stuff, scenes and things like that, or I would go out and do photographs, and so I always felt like I knew beauty when I saw it. I may not be able to technically speak to exactly what lens or what lighting package. But then, so that was very early on. You're kind of, because I don't have a film degree. I have a film theory degree, because Berkeley doesn't have a film, right? But I did shoot stuff while I was there. I was out shooting things because I enjoyed trying to tell stories in any way I could. And then I had the experience of being on sets. And you know, then you are learning. I'm a very curious person. I'm not afraid to ask questions. I'm not afraid to kind of be right up in an area unless you tell me to get out of that area. So I would, you know, listen and watch and see. And then I did the experimental film. I guess 2011-ish. Then went into the writer program, and after I got out of that, I was on People vs. OJ sets, and I supervised my episodes. And as a supervisor of your episodes, you're dealing with all the departments. You're dealing with actors. You're doing all the things that you do. And then when Black Panther, you know, I was hanging with Coog. I was, you know, when I was there, you're trying not to be invasive, but he knew what I wanted to do, and
Right.
and so it was that. But I think, you know, I think I've always had an eye for an aesthetic eye, and I just try to use that. And I'm one of those people that would read. You know, there was a certain point that because Berkeley wasn't I couldn't get a film degree, like production degree. I just would go to the library or bookstores and just get all of these books on how to shoot and camera angles and how to stage scenes and what lenses do. And I would just read them and I would make notes and as if I was studying, and I would try to do them when I was shooting. So I kind of, I always kind of lean on myself, trust in me, and bet on myself. So that was my journey.
Wow, thank you so much. And my favorite episode of OJ was, we want to go to Ross.
my jury episode. I'm
Thank
so
you.
glad. Oh, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna bring on Christina, and I just also want to make sure you guys know you're not like obliged to turn on your video, but you're certainly welcome to. So I'm gonna pass you over, and it's just gonna take a sec.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing good. I am also wanting to direct my first feature in Oakland, and my question was, how did you, with your first film, how did you start the process of finding a team to get to direct something, especially in Oakland?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it was because we had Netflix on board.
Mhm.
It was about trying to find trying to tap into the production world that exists up there. And it's, you know, it's not like being in New York or LA where it's a ton of people that you can tap into, but there are really strong and qualified crew folks who they live in the Bay. And so a lot of them come and work in LA, but they're from there or they live there. And so for us, it was we had to bring in, I think our production office team, but we tried to, and then our department heads, but we tried to kind of deal with all of the rest of the people in the area that generally work when things are shot there. And so it took a little more time to find, because people who are good are actually busy, right? Because there's not that many folks, but that's how we worked. But we were coming in with, you know, we knew when we were going to shoot. We knew we knew kind of the elements that we needed, and it was even still tough. So in terms of like, if it's just like, oh, I'm going up and I'm going to do this indie movie and I'm trying to tap in, I would reach out to the film office and just talk to, like, start that. I mean, because I know that's what we did, even though we had Netflix. It was like we started like, help us. This is what we're looking for. Help us find, you know, X, Y, and Z, this, that, and the third. And I would say this: the community was super supportive and excited about films being shot there. And so the city, everyone was so helpful and excited to have movies shot there. And I mean, I know Boots did his movie a little bit before mine, sorry to bother you. And so, and then, you know, and then there was The Last Black Man in San Francisco. Like, there was lots of movies there, Blind Spotting. So there is a sense of that.
Mm-hmm.
But I would talk to the film office and then tap into that community. They're hard workers and they care. And they, you know, everyone we interacted with loved the idea of the Bay getting more attention and their stories being told. So.
Okay. And can I ask one more question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, one more question. Also, I have been working as a script coordinator for the last 4 years, trying to get my way up, but every time the show gets canceled. And so I wanted to know, I finally got reps, I got agents, and I got a manager. And I wanted to know, this is the time where you're in quarantine and you're trying to get a general meeting. What are some tips for, I guess, someone like me working to get their first staff writing position?
Yeah. So I would say similar to what I was saying. So if you have that sample, that your writing sample, that your calling card, I would spend this time working on that,
Hmm.
honing it, making it the strongest thing you can. And then I would look at, because no one knows what's going to happen, right? So, and that's the crazy thing right now. You're like, you don't know what shows are going to come back, and what, there's people who have overall deals that may go away. There's so much influx going on that the one thing you can control is what you have and who you want to target. So you could say, I have my sample, this thing that I know speaks for me, or my idea for a show, whatever that thing is. And then if you have the time to be like, okay, these are the creatives or creators or producers that I really want to be in business with, that I want to learn from, I want to grow with. Try to find, talk to your rep, try to find out who can, within that company or within that sphere, who can get your material. But don't send it to them unless you know that they're going to read it, because right now people can't hire you anyway, right? And so it becomes a thing. If they know, if it's like, oh yeah, I can get to them and I know they're gonna, they'll have plenty of time to do it and they're going to look at it, that's one thing. But if they don't know who you are and people are going to want to like talk to you, you really want to just have yourself prepared and know where you want to go and who you want to talk to, and then roll with the punches, because no one knows what's going to happen, and everyone is really off balance. And so until it starts to open up, there isn't an easy or quick answer. I'm sorry that your timing hit in the way it hit, but here's the thing: the reality of that is also the way things play out are the way they're going to play out, and you just gotta, and there's people who have had projects where they've been working on it for decades, and then they're on set about to start shooting, and then the actor, something happens and then it goes away. Or
I worked on Lovecraft Country, so I know.
Yeah, so there is a lot, we're all betting on ourselves in a lot of ways, and you just gotta be resilient in that way. This is a crazy, unforeseen circumstance, but it doesn't mean that it's that when you do have the opportunity, it won't pan out to what you want it to be, and maybe something greater than you thought you were going to have in the first place. And so I would say spend the time honing your craft the best you can, and prepare and know where you want to go. And then when there is an opportunity, be persistent. Be persistent. People are busy, so what? And that's what I would say.
Yeah. And I just want to say I'm from Oakland, East Oakland, so I'm so happy to listen to you and chat with you and all that good stuff.
Oh, that makes me smile. Thank you.
No
That's
problem.
awesome. All right.
Okay, so we have two more, and
Okay.
we're going to start with John McMahon.
I was wondering if you could talk about the genesis of your film project, All Day and a Night, how it got started. Was Netflix involved early on?
No, I wrote the script. I wrote the script 9 or 10 years ago. It was a while ago. Like I said, the film is inspired by some things that I've seen throughout my life and some folks I spent time with and stuff. And I wrote the script, and I knew it was something that I would one day direct, and the kind of closeness of some of my interactions in that world, and the way I wanted to approach it. I knew that I would do that at some point. So then I went into the Marvel Writer Program, and I was in that for a couple of years, and then I got out and I started. I worked on People vs. O.J. Simpson as a writer and a producer on that, and I developed a really great relationship with the producers of People vs. O.J., Nina Jacobson and Brad Simpson. Like a really strong, creative, and they're super smart, amazing people. And we had a conversation after the show about wanting to continue to work together. And they had a great deal of belief in me as a director. On set, sometimes we joke about, like, I remember on set one day I said, I'll be really good at this job. And they're like, yeah, we know. And we want to be a part of you when you start directing. And so after the show, I brought them the script and I said, this is the one I want to cut my teeth on. And they came on board. We started to have conversations about who to attach, because we needed some attachments. And I always had my eye on Jeffrey Wright. I feel like he disappears into any role. And I looked at the JD character as someone who's a very capable man who's allowed his frustration with his disappointment in his life and his family's life to manifest into self-medicating and to lashing out violently in the world. And I wanted someone who can bring humanity to that, and also disappear in that character. So we reached out to him and got him attached. And we attached another producer who has a great track record, named Jared Goldman, in independent films. He did Ingrid Goes West and some other movies, and he had worked with Netflix. And we took it to Netflix, and they came on board a couple months before Black Panther came out, and so shortly after Black Panther was out, I within like 3 months, we headed up to Oakland to go into production.
Would you call Netflix a forward-leaning, really kind of take chances kind of company?
Yes. It's I wouldn't even call it take. They are extremely creative, friendly, and I would say forward-leaning or forward-looking. Like they give opportunities to new voices and established voices, so they aren't limited. They're really looking for, you have a company with such a broad platform and so many customers, they need content, right? And so they're open to allowing creatives to be creative, right? And to make stories and to speak from different points of view and perspectives. And it was I've had a fantastic experience working with them.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah, no worries, man.
Okay, I want to go ahead and call on Tyler, and this is our last question.
All right. Hey there.
Hey, Joe.
How you doing?
I'm good. My question went away. Okay. I wanted to ask you about, your approach to writing flawed characters, because I read in this interview one time where you talked about, writing Killmonger. It's not necessarily your perspective or point of view that makes you a villain. It's how far you take it. And that line in particular really stuck with me, because I find myself, I'm really attracted to those anti-hero, often disenfranchised characters, and the way that writers are able to humanize them in a way is the best type of storytelling that I'm really attracted to. So I was curious to know your approach to writing those type of characters.
Yeah, That's a good question. I'm attracted to similar characters, and you know, for me, I like to say storytelling is an exercise in empathy, and I try. I try to step. I try to get out of. I try to step away from my ego, all right, and try to be self-aware enough to know what my own frailties are, as best I can, to remove them from the equation and try to look at the world through someone else's eyes. And that's like, and it can be work. It's like trying to look at the humanity of someone, their wants, their needs, their desires, as a human being, and not as the character, not as, oh, this I'm writing a villain, so I need, what do villains want? No, but what is the human being in that circumstance? What would that human being want? And then use that to motivate the behaviors, right? To use that to motivate why they're doing what they're doing, or how they're doing what they're doing, or how they're reacting to what they're doing. And so I mean, that's my approach, is to really kind of not be a very judgmental writer and try to see how a character would see themselves, and I try to approach all my characters that way. And then with that, if you allow the characters to drive the story, which is my approach as well, I feel like you get stronger stories that way. I feel like the best stories have great characters in them, and so you're making your decisions on narrative based on character motivations, and not, you know, doing, oh, I need a set piece here, so I'm gonna have it because I saw this pretty like thing. It's more like, oh, this character needs to be doing X, Y, and Z. And so, and then you find things that fit, that are, in my experience, more amazing than the shiny thing you thought would have been great. So that's how I do. And I think villains are amazing to write if you can write them from how they see themselves, right? Because I guarantee, but you know, no one looks at themselves as if they're doing anything wrong, right? To some degree. So, or they justify it, you know. So that would be my answer.
And one last thing, ATL. I don't know if you're allowed to talk, if you talk about this often, but ATL, you were part of that writing team.
I wrote the shooting draft. That was my first thing I got to write.
That is one of my favorite coming of age stories by far. Like, me and my roommate used to watch it every single night. I can quote it like in the back of my head. It's great. It's fantastic. Just wanted to let you know that.
Yeah, I was baby, man. I was a baby, right? I was, you know, that was my first foray into getting somebody writing a check. It wasn't a big check, but they wrote me a check to do that, to write the shooting draft. They took me down to Atlanta. I was down there while I was shooting and stuff, so it was great.
Well, the movie's great. Writing's great.
Thank you.
Classic.
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate that. That's a callback. I love that.
Thank you, man.
All right. Take care.
Joe, thank you so much for sharing all of your experiences making this film with us, and for spending your night with us. Derek, also thank you so much for so many great questions. I really hope we can do this live sometime. Yeah. I mean, in person, I guess. It'd be great to have you guys back.
Yeah.
So congratulations. And Derek, I'll let you wrap it up.
Yeah, thank you so much, Joe, from SCA and African American Cinema Society in particular. So we look forward to seeing more of your films. It's just really cool to see how your career grew, because we're doing the same thing. Tyler, Caitlin, a few other people who ask questions, those are all my friends. So we're looking up to coming up right behind you. So thank you for showing a guiding light of it.
Hey man, anytime, you guys. It's my pleasure. I really enjoyed this. It's been great.
Thank you.
All right, y'all. Take care, huh? Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Take care. Good night.